Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Janine. Janine is a foreign language educator and writer whose work explores culture, identity, and heritage. She is both a co-editor and contributing author of Unearthing Traditions, Stories of Language and Culture book series, a publication from the Center for Language Learning, the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. Janine, I'm so happy to have you here today and have this conversation with you. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you for inviting me to be part of your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw your work online and I just knew that we had to have a conversation. So I'm very thankful that you are willing to and make the time to talk to me about the work that you do and your culture and your language.
No problem.
I like to start each episode with the same question, which is what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
Okay, so I would say I have two first languages. So one is English, and the other would be Trinidadian Creole English. So for the sake of the episode and not having to repeat this entire language name, I'll just shorten it to TEC.
Okay.
So Trinidadian English Creole.
Okay.
So those two are my first languages. Those are the languages that I grew up speaking. And well, later in high school, I would have picked up some other languages. So in Trinidad and Tobago, in most high schools, we do Spanish. So we have to do Spanish for at least 3 years. We can continue 2 additional years or 4 additional years after that compulsory period. And some schools teach French. So fortunately, my school did. And I did French up until that would be Form 6, which is like Cambridge level, I believe, in
Okay.
the UK system.
Mm-hmm.
And during my high school period, I would have begun to self-study Portuguese. I was not old enough to join formal Portuguese classes, so I had to wait until I was 18 and off to university to actually start. But I did have an interest in Portuguese at that time. And when I got to university, I started doing Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
And also when I was an undergraduate student, I started studying Mandarin, and which surprisingly later on became the language that really defined my professional career. I've also done a bit of German and Japanese, not so good in them, but I hope, in the future to improve on those two languages.
Okay. Were you always interested in language from the beginning, even before you started the earlier exposure to French and Spanish and Portuguese, or was that something that you developed through exposure to these other languages?
I would say it's something that I developed because when I was younger, I wanted to go into medicine. And I think that's because my parents were in medicine, that
Mm-hmm.
field.
Mm-hmm.
But, after being in French and Spanish classes, I just fell in love with learning languages.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I feel like I had that too. Like I didn't really think too much of it. And then once I started being in more language classes, I'm like, this is really cool. This
Yeah,
is
it's so much more than just, grammar, vocabulary. You learn about other people's culture. So I
Mhm.
think that experience really drew me in
Yeah.
to wanting more with languages.
So in Trinidad and Tobago, with the Creole being spoken and
hmm
English being spoken, can you talk with us a bit about the dynamic about how Trinidadians, Tobagonians use the languages interchangeably? Are there places where we're using one more than the other and mixing the two and how what's the soundscape? How does it sound?
Oh, well, I think maybe throughout the interview you will hear me slip in and out of the Creole because usually we speak Creole in very informal situations. So situations that we are familiar with our friends, with our family, everyday life situations, we tend to use the Creole. But we are also taught from a very young age that, when interacting with others, particularly foreigners, we do have to switch to a more standard variety of English so that we may be understood. So very formal settings, we tend to use this standard English, and in informal settings, we use the Creole. But there's one thing I have to point out. So although we are one country, Trinidad and Tobago, it's made up of 2 islands, but we speak different Creoles. There's
Okay.
Trinidadian English Creole and
Mhm.
there's Tobagonian English Creole. There are
Okay.
words I don't know and don't understand in Tobagonian English Creole. So, and that's because, although we are one country now, in the past we were not. So Trinidad was a Spanish colony. And only until we became a British colony later, the British would have joined Trinidad and Tobago together to form one country. And that, I believe, would have happened in the late 1880s. So we had very complete different historical developments. So, and that would have influenced how our Creole sounds.
Okay.
So, like in Trinidad, in particular, so our Creole, just like Tobagonian English Creole, has an English base, but because of things like migration patterns, different legislative initiatives. For example, we had the settler population under the Spanish, and that would have brought plantation owners, freed African persons, mulattoes from the French Caribbean to come to Trinidad.
Okay.
So you notice in some of our Creole, we do have a lot of patois terms and some French terms as well.
Okay.
For example, one of our folklore creatures, La Diablesse. So in Creole, we don't pronounce it like that. We pronounce it as La Diablesse. So we do have a lot of French influence in our Creole. And in addition to French, we do have some influence from West African languages, Spanish, East Indian languages, and even some of our indigenous languages, some words and terms. So like many place names in Trinidad, the origin of the name traces to our indigenous languages. For example, Shaguanas, Shagaramas, Guarayagayari. Those are, I believe, maybe Carib or Arawakan terms.
Okay.
But it's terms from the indigenous peoples that we would have integrated into our language.
Okay. So this Creole in Trinidad is a lot more diverse than
Yes.
we'd probably even take at face value and understand. That's so interesting. Like, and when you mentioned the Spanish part of it and that, colonization era, I'm like, oh, that's when in my mind the bells are going off. Like, oh yeah, of course, this has an impact on what we hear today. So in comparison to what's being spoken in Tobago, what is their Creole like? Do you know?
I'm not too familiar, but I know Tobagonian, like the history, I think they would have had more European powers there. So they had the Dutch at some point in time. So that may have influenced their Creole, but I'm not too familiar with
Okay.
the version of Creole spoken there.
Okay. I'm so glad that you're making that distinction. And personally, I'm glad because a lot of times I'm in New York City. Of course, there's
Mhm.
a lot of Caribbean people, West Indian people here, and that includes a lot of people from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
So we like to shorten and call and just say Trini people, the
Yes.
Trini shop, the Trini roti, the Trini this. But I always feel a little pang of guilt because I feel like I'm leaving out Tobago.
Tobago.
So I try as hard as I can to say Trinidad and Tobago all the time because I don't want people to, you know, think I'm ignoring this
It's
other.
sometimes difficult for me too because it's easier to say Trini.
Mhm.
We have a term that we use. We're supposed to be using Trinbagonian,
Okay, I've
but
heard that.
it's long,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we do have a preference for shortening words. So
Uh, have you noticed, as a Creole speaker
mhm.
that, you know, for my listeners who, listen for a long time, they know. So I'm asking this also as a fellow Caribbean person, person of descent on my end. But we have encountered stigmas with using the Creole. And like you said earlier, speaking it in tourist spaces or official spaces and it being frowned on to use the Creole in an official capacity. But what have you noticed over time about how maybe those perceptions are shifting and maybe people feeling more comfortable to use the Creole or maybe taking away some of those stigmas that using the Creole once carried for communities?
I think this it's gradually changing,
Mhm,
but you still have a certain degree of stigma within um, certain spaces for the use of Creole.
mhm,
So a lot of us have grown up hearing that you have to speak properly.
mhm,
But what is speaking properly? This is our language,
mhm,
we have been told at times to, if you use a lot of Creole, you you lack some kind of professional polish
mm,
to your words. So you would often hear parents telling their children, like, you need to speak the Queen's English,
mm,
basically. But
mhm,
I think that came from a lack of understanding that, the Creole is a fully developed language that has rules, just like and structure and power of expression, like any other language. I think maybe there are like many people have been trying to reclaim the power of being able to use Creole, whether it be through literature, so using it more in our local fiction, and also spoken words or artistic expression.
mhm,
But it still has this stigma that is always like overlooked over our heads that if we speak Creole in certain spaces, it would not be accepted.
mm,
And of course, the situation is not helped because we don't have anything in law that states that this is an official language of Trinidad and Tobago. It's still English.
mhm,
Even there's legislation that puts Spanish as our first foreign language,
mm,
but there's nothing written into law that acknowledges Creole as our language. It's just, the language of the street, basically,
mm.
has that status.
Yeah.
So I think more can be done. I hope more can be done so that the conversation can shift and we can see Creole as something that is part of our identity, is something that is worth preserving, is something that is worth celebrating on a national scale.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for that. I'm
Yes.
I'm all for that. I think it's so important for people to understand, like, I it's not a dialect. It's not broken.
No, it's not broken English. It is a language.
Exactly. Exactly. So now I'm understanding even more what you're saying about, there's legislation that Spanish is that second language. So that's
Mhm.
why you guys are all, it's a compulsory part of your education to
Yes.
learn that Spanish. Do you notice people Spanish spoken widely as a second
Um,
language or just
no, it's just on paper, I would say.
okay.
I mean, we do have now a bigger migrant population from particularly from Venezuela,
Right, right.
but it's not widely spoken.
Mm-hmm.
It's just literally on paper. There was a creation of the Spanish implementation. It's a branch that is now under, I think, the Ministry of Tertiary Education. So it was a unit. I actually worked there when I came out of undergraduate. But we were tasked with creating community programs to teach persons basic Spanish, but it's not as widespread as it should be if it's
Okay.
in law.
I understand. When it comes to the Creole itself and as it's spoken around, let's talk about Trinidad. We're in
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad. Sorry, Tobago. But we are moving around Trinidad and the Creole spoken. So we have a tourism industry, obviously, and we have a big city, and then we have smaller cities and a lot of interaction with tourists. How do you notice in strictly in your, experience, how do you notice that the Creole changes as we move around Trinidad?
That's a very, very good question. I think most words and terms it have pretty much been the same. Although, sometimes I would hear a word being used in Creole and I'm like, oh, I've never heard this before. This is
Mm.
such an old saying.
Oh, okay.
So we do have cases like that. But I think because language itself is dynamic,
Yeah.
maybe the Creole spoken 10 years from now will have different words that I wouldn't understand, but the younger generation may. So I think there is a possibility for it to absorb, um, as elements from other languages around the world or um, changing vocabulary from English, so like American English or
Mm-hmm.
British English. There's a possibility for it to absorb elements from there, but for now, in my space, personally, I haven't encountered anything. I would just hear like words ever so often. I'll be like, that's a very old saying. I probably heard my grandmother say that, and I didn't know it existed. But yeah, because of the dynamic nature of language, it will undergo at least some process of change sometime.
Yeah. Now, I think it's so well, first of all, to your point about hearing a phrase that, your grandmother used to say, that's one of my personal joys is when I hear a saying that I haven't heard in such a long time or, a saying that the quote unquote old folks would say. And it's like, man, I got to start using that again. I can't let that die. I
Yes.
have to, I have to let people know about this joyous saying. But I think also, I asked that question just because, like you said, language is dynamic. And sometimes the way that a language is spoken in a larger city versus or in a touristy area
Mhm.
is different than it's spoken in the countryside or on the coast
Yeah.
or, things like that. So I was just curious to know if there was any that kind of variation that we're seeing, maybe people from the west side of
Oh,
the island or the east side.
actually, yes. So there are some terms that, for example, some people in South may use some terms or have a way of expressing an idea that if we hear it in the West, we would not know
Mhm,
what they're trying to say initially.
mhm,
For example, I remember hearing from, I think it was a classmate, and she was from, this is like East Trinidad. So the top part is like Sandy Grande, Toco region. I think she's from there. And she asked me sometime like away day. And I was like, what?
mm,
I literally just stared at her like, I don't know what you're saying. And she was just asking like, how are you? I'm like,
Oh,
oh, we speak the same thing. And okay, it must be a regional thing. So I know there are definitely some differences in even some of the vocabulary that we use in particular regions. For example, if you are in a region in Trinidad where typically more of the East Indian indentured laborers would have settled in the past, maybe you'll have knowledge of some words from those languages and you'll
okay.
be using it in your everyday speech. And if you use it with someone like me, who is from the west of Trinidad, I wouldn't understand immediately
Okay.
what you are saying.
Yeah. That makes sense. I can understand that. Um, you talked about how you started learning Chinese
Yes.
and studying Chinese, and now it's become a part of your career.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So it happened completely by accident. I did not intend to study Chinese. So at the time, I was maybe in my second year. I think it was my second year of university.
Mhm.
And I had made a promise every semester I would do a language because at the language center in the university, you only had to pay 50 TT dollars to study a language per semester.
Okay.
So I tried. Um, at that time, our center was offering Italian, and I was with my friend, and we were going to sign up for the class, and then her dad kind of advised against it and said, where would we use Italian? We'll have to go to Italy
Mm.
and really use it. It doesn't have that reach. So he's like, try Mandarin. Try Mandarin. So at first I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to learn Mandarin. It seems very, very difficult.
Mhm.
I've heard it before in Chinese kung fu movies. So I didn't think I would be able to produce those sounds.
Mhm.
And I did try to get in Japanese class because that was something I was more familiar with. We Most of Trinidad and Tobago grew up watching, especially my generation, 1990s babies. We watched Pokemon, all of those
Sailor
different
Moon,
anime,
all of
Sailor
those,
Moon,
yeah.
yes. So I was like, okay, let me try Japanese. Went to sign up for it. It was full. So I was like, okay, well, I kind of stuck with Chinese.
Okay.
So I have to see how it is. And, during this semester, I realized, oh, I'm picking up this language pretty quickly. It makes sense to me. And I just gradually began to fall in love with the language and the culture. I think because I also had a very good teacher at that time. So she not only introduced us to the language, but also different cultural aspects. So I actually started developing a love for handicraft, traditional Chinese folk art. So paper cutting, Chinese knot making. And it just literally just happened. I just let it flow. And now I teach Chinese, and that would be 7 years after I stepped in a Chinese classroom.
Wow.
Yeah. So it literally was just, I did not plan. I did not anticipate that I would end up teaching Chinese
Mhm.
at all. But it's a surprise that I I would never expected, but I appreciate that it happened.
Yeah.
It brought a lot of opportunities.
Uh-huh.
I had opportunities to travel to China to do training there, to teach. Through my trips to China, I've met people from all over the world that
Yeah.
I probably would not have met
Right.
under other circumstances. So it took me on a journey that I didn't expect, but I love that I made
Yeah.
that decision to
Yeah.
go and sign up for the class.
That's where you're supposed to be.
Yes.
This is exactly where you're supposed to be, and opportunities unfold just
Yes.
because that Japanese class was full.
Yes, it was. And it actually, when I actually decided to go back and learn Japanese, so I did a semester. Um, my knowledge of Chinese made it easier to recognize a lot of the characters because while my classmates were struggling with kanji, I was like,
Mm.
well, I already can recognize some of these characters already, so it's easier for me. It's easier for me to write, although their kanji is based on traditional Chinese writing script. So I would have learned simplified, but I recognize the difference. It still gave me an advantage.
Yeah, yeah. So just for my listeners' clarification, we're talking about Mandarin.
Yes, Mandarin.
Okay.
I
Uh,
cannot speak Cantonese,
no.
although Cantonese is spoken
Yeah.
very widely here in Trinidad and Tobago because most of the migrants, the Chinese migrants,
Mm.
we had, I think it was two waves of Chinese migration
Mhm.
in the 1880s, I believe.
Okay.
I may be wrong about the date, but we did have major waves of Chinese migration here who came to work as laborers, and they ended up staying, setting up shop, integrating within society. And
Mhm.
most of them were Cantonese speakers.
Okay.
So it's more prevalent here. But no, I can't speak a word
Okay.
of Cantonese.
All
Cannot.
right.
Mandarin.
They are quite different. Even the
Yes,
times that
they're
I've
very different.
I've like
They're
dipped
very
my
different.
toe into trying and I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't
Yeah,
uh
I think it's difficult. And I do have students who are native Cantonese speakers that come
mhm.
in my class to do Mandarin. And they hear themselves. They think it's also a big challenge
Yeah.
learning it
Mhm.
because they're two different languages, completely different languages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you when you started with Chinese, when you started with
Mhm.
Mandarin, and you said this was easy for you to pick up. I don't like to call any language hard because I think it really all depends on where you're coming from and your abilities and what's I think every person's ability to learn a language is within their capability. It doesn't mean it's
Yes.
difficult across the board or easy across the board for everyone. But for you, and coming in and saying that you got this, like you knew where you were going right away. What were some of the things that were standing out to you as easy? Like
So
what were you finding easy about it?
I think the thing that most intimidated me about wanting to learn Chinese, well, I shouldn't even say wanting, but
Mm.
going into the Chinese class, was the characters. So being able to read it. But I realized from early on, like I didn't need the pinyin. Pinyin is what is used to help you pronounce read the words in Chinese more
Okay.
accurately.
Okay.
So it's a system where you use the letters from English and accompanied by tone markers. So because Chinese is tonal,
Yes.
so the tone mark tells you how to pronounce this particular syllable.
Mhm.
And I realized maybe by the fourth or fifth week, like I didn't really need the pinyin. I would remember the characters. I practiced them a lot. I figured out a system that worked for me, and it just came easier
Mhm.
to me. Where I would see like my classmates struggling a lot and trying to find ways to remember. You know, everybody when they're learning a language, they try to find this shortcut, you know, to,
Yeah. Yeah.
to achieve your end goal. But I I just chose what worked for me. my learning style. I'm a very visual learner, so I did activities that helped me to retain a lot of the characters. So I read a lot. And even by the end of the semester, I was able to read stories, like short stories in Mandarin, which I think, it even amazed my teacher because she was like, oh, how come this is coming so easy to you? So it wasn't a problem when she eventually left to go back to her home university in China. She was the one who recommended me to basically take over her spot. So that's how I ended up teaching at the same center I learned Chinese initially at. So I really can't explain. A lot of people ask me it, but I literally just let things there's a Chinese saying, 顺其自然. So it means like you just let things happen naturally. And I think that is what I did with Chinese. I just let things fall into place naturally. And then when you look back at it, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't expect any of this, but I am happy that I actually stuck with it.
How long were you learning before you stepped into the teacher? How many years?
I only did at that point in time maybe 3 years of formal classes of Chinese, and then I started to self-study.
Okay.
So I would have left the Chinese classroom, I think, around 2014. So during the 3 years before I actually started to teach, I did mostly self-study, and I started working at the Confucius Institute. So I did have a lot of practice using my Chinese. So my self-study was supplemented by being in the environment on a daily basis. So it was a little bit easier to transition to the point of teaching, because I did my work there, although I was the administrative staff. I was kind of like straddling the line of administrative and academic. So I would go out and do outreach programs with them. So teach different aspects of Chinese culture, like calligraphy, the handicrafts, work with a lot of kids, adults. So I had gotten a lot of hands-on experience. So by the time I was in the classroom, it was a lot easier, the transition. Although it was difficult in some aspects at the start, it was a lot easier because I had that experience with the Confucius Institute.
Okay. What has it been like teaching?
Well, first, it is very tiring. Being a teacher is a very exhausting profession, but it's something that is very rewarding. I would say it's a very dynamic experience because teaching comes with a lot of interesting layers. It overall has been a very meaningful experience because I've had a lot of support from my university. So I do teach at the same university I studied at, University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus. So that's in Trinidad and Tobago. We do have main campuses. So we have one in Barbados, which is Cave Hill, and Mona. I do think we have a global campus, but let me not dig myself in that hole if I'm saying any inaccurate information about the university. But the St. Augustine campus, they have really supported my journey as a Chinese educator. So sometimes in language teaching, there's this little unspoken assumption that we should be taught by a person that looks like the people who come from that country where the language is spoken. And it has never been a barrier for me because of the university support and also my students, because seeing a local, a Trinidadian, teaching them Chinese, it kind of puts them at ease and it shifts their mindset from, learning Chinese is something that is so beyond me, it's unattainable, to something that is like a mindset that is, I can do this too. I see somebody like me, so I'm more motivated to do this as well. And I have had, some students who do want to actually teach Chinese in the future, which, brings me a lot of joy because one, I could share my workload so I can have more time for myself. But just knowing that you inspired somebody to actually consider this as a real viable career option, it I can't even describe it, but it warms my heart. It makes me feel very, very good that I was able to, have that impact on them. I think any like local teacher who's teaching a language that is not their own, when they're teaching students that look like them, it allows us to connect in a way that is, I think, far beyond like if a native speaker did it, because I understand their challenges as a learner. I've had to learn the language the same as them. So I know how to guide them in a way that they can minimize anything like embarrassment. I would know what situations to get them away from or advise them how to handle the situation if you encounter it. And I could draw cultural references because we do have, although Trinidad and Tobago and China are miles apart, we do have some common grounds that we share in our culture.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I'd love to hear more about some of these common grounds.
I would say, if we look at the Caribbean as a whole, we do share a lot of commonalities with Chinese people. For example, the level of respect we place on like families and the elderly in particular, both in Caribbean culture as well as Chinese culture, plays a central role. So there's always this value placed on maintaining connections with your family and showing respect across different generations. So we can't, if your parents have a friend who is Julie, you can't just call the friend Julie. You'll get, your parent will be, you'll get
Yep.
a cutter, as we say, or you'll get in trouble. You have to say Auntie Julie, and that is ingrained because I find myself even doing that with, older people, like people who would have known my parents in the past, calling them auntie and uncle, because it's so strange to just call them by their name. And that's because that concept of respect is ingrained in our upbringing.
Right.
And I think that is also a part of Chinese culture. They also address people like that. Auntie and uncle, they have their terms for that. But with the similarities, you also have differences, but it's differences that we could actually learn from. So like, Trinbagonians, we are very expressive, and I think that's because of our Creole language. So at times, Chinese communication with Chinese people can seem like, a little bit reserved. And they do place a lot of emphasis on modesty. There is like a certain hierarchy within the society. So you do have to be careful with the language you use with somebody who possibly outranks you. So a lot of that catches the eye of our students. Like, for example, I was given a lesson the other day in class and we were talking about modesty. So Chinese have a concept where they deflect compliments. So whereas if somebody says, "Oh, you look so good today," or "Your Chinese is so perfect," we would say, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got this at X and X store." But in Chinese, you're taught to be modest.
Okay.
So you need to deflect the compliment. So you may say, "Oh, no, this is just like an old dress." Or you say, "Oh, no, my skills are not so good." So it's very subtle things that the students pick up,
Mm.
and well, I pointed out to them, and then they're able to compare, in Trinidad, we do this, that, and the other. So I think, like with in any foreign language classroom, those kind of cultural references, cultural lessons, it helps to teach us more. It goes beyond the language and
Mhm.
helps us to understand, the mindset of the people who speak the language, the culture behind the traditions that they share.
Mhm.
You get to understand how they think, how they
Yeah.
see the world.
Yeah. It's so grounding, I think, and you can, as a student, I think, connect better with the language and even pick it up faster when you not only, like you said, see someone who looks like you who's teaching this class and teaching the language, but even having a point of comparison is so helpful. I would love to hear about your book, Unearthing Traditions, and what inspired this project and what role they've played in helping readers understand cultures different from their own.
Huh. So the book actually came, it was an idea I had, I think it was 2023. And I was thinking about it for a long time because I think a lot of the world's problems could be solved if we just understood each other better. So I took the idea to the director of the Center for Language Learning, and she was very supportive of it. She ran with it, and I mean, everything just happened so quickly from collecting the articles to publication. But essentially, my idea behind it was it's inspired by the desire to create spaces for voices and stories that reflect the diversity of our lived experiences across the globe.
Mhm.
So I really wanted to showcase culture as not just something that we inherit, but we actively live. We have to question, we pass on through our language and through storytelling.
Mhm.
So it is like a collection of stories based on people's experiences interacting with different cultural traditions, or even some people showcasing some traditions from their particular country. So in the first volume, we're actually on volume 2 now. I'm very surprised that we made it to volume 2. But like in volume 1, we had contributions from like Colombia, Nigeria, Mozambique, and we have 3 sections in the book.
Okay.
One section is dedicated to the Americas and Europe, so it covers like South America and Europe. And we have, for example, in volume 1, we had an article about a type of carnival in Ecuador. We had some articles about the use of a particular phrase in Colombia. So very interesting things that you wouldn't know about
Mhm.
just existing.
Yeah.
You have to actually go out there and seek all this type of information. So I wanted to bring it all together
Mhm.
so that someone, reading those articles, maybe I want to go and explore this country. Maybe I can learn the language of that country, go there, make an impact,
Mhm.
forge a link between Trinidad and Tobago and that particular country.
Yeah.
Then our second section is based on Asia and Africa. So we had articles from China, Japan. There was a lovely article one of my students actually wrote for describing her experience in Japan because she was on a program to teach English in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And through that program, she would have had the opportunity to visit different places in Japan, interact with their culture. And she's just talking about her experience as a Trinidadian living there and interacting with all of these new things, the new food, a new way of life.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a third section, which is called Trinidad and Tobago and the World. So here we focus on Trinbagonian voices. So Trinis and Tobagonians who would have gone abroad, lived abroad, and could share some experience about their times there and how it made them feel. Or if there's a culture, there's a festival there in that particular country that can relate to something that we celebrate here. So we have articles showcasing those type of topics in that particular section.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the overall goal is just to remind readers that, although our experiences may differ, there are shared experiences that can bring us ultimately together.
Yeah.
So that's the idea behind the whole book series. We do have, although we just launched volume 2, we do have volume 3 in the works, but it's not going to be out until maybe 2028. We want to take a little bit of time with this one since the center will be celebrating 30 years
Okay.
in 2028. So we'll probably make it like an anniversary edition, and then it will give us some time to prepare,
Mm-hmm.
probably a bigger volume, because we had in the first book we had 20 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
This one we did in total 25. So maybe we'll go up to 30. We'll have some more authors join the book series.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, also as part of the book, I was able to launch a mini door line. So with little travel companions, I am so sorry I don't have any to show you. That is right in front of me.
Listeners, I've seen them and they are adorable. They're so
Um,
cute.
it's actually a collaboration. So my student, I describe what I want,
Mm-hmm.
and she draws it for me.
Oh my God.
And then I've been working with a local artist. Her name is Tamia, and she runs a company called Little Crafts TT. And she brings those things to life. So it's like I see it as a very like a project where I get to work with my students and also help our local artists really showcase her work, because
Yeah.
I mean it would not have been anything. My thing is just the ideas, but it's really them
Yeah.
who bring it
No.
to life.
We love a local shout out. Love to help
Definitely.
local businesses and showcase local
Definitely. No,
businesses.
she is amazing. And she sews them by hand. She paints all of the details by hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just blown away by what she was able to produce.
I'm scribbling furiously as you're talking because there's so many questions I want to ask you about this, about the book. Before I get to that, because I don't want to go off on a tangent and forget to ask you, where can we get our copies of Volume 1, Volume 2?
So for now, we do only sell the physical copies
Mhm.
in Trinidad and Tobago, but we're working on putting them on Amazon so that it's available globally.
Okay.
So just bear with us for a few more months and we'll get
Okay.
it. We'll get it there on Amazon
Okay.
so that everyone can get a chance to enjoy the
Okay.
stories that we have to tell.
I love that. Okay. Or we can just come to Trinidad and Tobago. Am I
I mean, that would
understanding
be
that?
great. We would
Okay.
welcome you here.
Okay.
We will welcome you here anytime. I mean, it's always better to come during carnival so you can get the real Trini experience. But
Hmm.
anytime you can come to Trinidad and Tobago and just on your way, just pick up a copy. Okay.
I mean, you don't have to twist my arm.
Yeah.
I'm I'm ready to
Yeah,
come anytime.
come.
Um, no, this is terrific. And this is why I wanted to talk to you also too, because this is, this kind of collection and global awareness and appreciation celebration is right up my alley. And I know a lot of listeners will love this too. Okay. Um, so we're also talking about folk tales. Some people are
Mhm.
sharing folk tales and things. Is there anything particular that you feel about folk tales and their inclusion of them, especially among people telling more personal stories as well? And I guess maybe what you observe about the way that folk tales are able to um, convey a culture in a different way than a personal narrative can.
Really is, because these are the stories that, and they're often passed down just orally and not written.
Mm.
They're not recorded. So, but they serve so many purposes. They entertain us. So if we look at, for example, like Trinidad folklore and the stories surrounding our folklore in the Caribbean, I mean, I know we would have different ones, but like I think we could probably have maybe some similarities in those areas. So like I remember hearing the story of, I don't know if, because you mentioned to me your family is
Bahamas.
Bahamian. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bahamian. So I don't know if Bahamas has the same folklore character. We call her a sukunya. So it is like a witch who turns into a ball of fire.
Oh.
And it's an old woman that basically sheds her skin in the night, turns into a ball of fire, and supposed to enter. Like if you don't put certain precautions, she'll enter your home, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, I've never asked what happens beyond then, because I was just terrified as a child. But on the surface, that's a very frightening story. You hear that and you're like, oh, but it kind of teaches us to, protect our spaces, to be vigilant,
Mm-mm. Mm.
protect your home, be mindful of who you invite into your home, who you
Hmm.
trust.
Yeah.
So everything has like a moral lesson attached to it, whether it teaches us to respect, our household, our surroundings, nature, to reinforce any kind of community values. So storytelling is very, very important, and we do need to place more emphasis on that. I think because there has been, well, I've noticed it, a surge in writing and writing projects that celebrate our local traditions here in Trinidad and Tobago. And I really am for it. I love that we are doing that, because we have to we have to find ways to preserve our culture and, make, I hate to say it like this, but make our culture appealing to
Mm.
especially the younger persons who might look at, up countries outside of Trinidad and, want to adopt those countries' culture. And the thing is, we have something that's so unique. We need to be proud of ourselves. We need to
Yeah.
show up our culture. We need to be proud of what we have.
Hmm.
So I think storytelling like this, can help with that.
Hmm. This is really exciting. So, just to reiterate, currently these volumes are only available in Trinidad and Tobago,
Yes.
and we're also going to visit so we can pick them up in person. But for those of us who can't, just hang tight. It'll be available on Amazon hopefully
Soon on
soon.
Amazon. Yes.
Yes, and I personally am looking forward to 2 volumes and awaiting the third volume. Um,
Yes.
this has been really so cool talking with you and having this conversation with you. And I realized we did all this talk about culture and all this talk about language and folk history. And we didn't even talk about Carnival.
Oh, yes.
And
And what?
I don't even want to, we could have a whole separate conversation about Carnival, but um, Carnival is so celebrated in Trinidad and Tobago, but also people from all over the world recognize it as
Oh,
something
yeah.
that's Trinidadian and so unique to Trinidad. So in your experience, in your from your perspective, what is so special about Carnival and why do we love it so much?
I think it's because it's one of the only times that everybody comes together. Like there's no, I'm from this class, this social class, I'm from this racial background. Everybody comes together to celebrate Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. Like, it's a period of time where people are more relaxed. They're not very uptight. They're more happy. It just, there's a whole mindset shift in the country every time around Carnival. And
Mm.
it starts from January 1st. From the
Oh.
time we get out of Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
it starts. We get in the mindset that Carnival is coming up. Carnival is coming up. And I mean, I still enjoy it, although I think, it has been, well, it has become very commercialized and
Mm.
maybe a bit expensive to actually go out there and participate on the
Seem like.
streets, but people find ways around it. Juve is much a cheaper option and you get to have fun, free yourself. I said I have not played it myself
Mm-hmm.
personally, but I said, well, next year I'll give it a try and see how it is because I've always just watched on the sidelines everything that has gone on for Carnival. So I do want to actually try to participate in it
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's an experience you at least should have once in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do have the opportunity, come to Trinidad and Tobago. Is a time where everybody just there's no East Indian, no African, no Chinese. It's only Trinbagonian
Mm-hmm.
at this time. There's
Yeah.
no fighting. Everything is just unity
Mm-hmm.
around this time.
For people who want to come and experience Carnival at some point,
Mhm.
what do you think is the something that they should have or something that they should come with?
Money for a lot of the food because and that's something I look forward to all the time because around Carnival they set up a lot of booths around the savannah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main, like the roundabouts, but it's a main meeting point in the capital city. And that's where you actually have like the parade of the bands, Juve at that time, well, at that location as well. So it's the center of a lot of our carnival celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
And you have so much food to choose from.
Mm.
Like so much food. So much food. You are going to put on weight if you are coming at this time to Trinidad and Tobago because there'll be so much food in front of you. You won't be able to resist.
What's the
So I
meal?
think
What's the go-to? What do we look
well,
forward to?
first thing I would say everybody who comes to Trinidad and Tobago must taste doubles.
Mm.
That is the main, like, it's street food, but it's for many of us, it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, the meal that you take when before payday because it's a very cheap option for
Mhm.
us,
Yeah.
but it's so tasty. And I like to say that Trinidadian, the Trinbagonians are like we say meat mouth, meaning that we like to eat meat. We like to consume meat.
Mm-hmm.
Like people would argue in food places if you give them a very small piece of chicken with their meal or something. We
Mm-hmm.
love meat. but this is something that has no meat in it, and people just they love it. I love it. So it's something I think everybody should try when you come. It's basically so it's what we call bara. You make that out of split peas powder, and it's like fried dough, and you have like chickpeas in a special type of sauce. So not everybody's doubles taste the same.
Mm-hmm.
It can taste very different depending on how they make their sauce. And they you have like different things to add to it. So you can add shaved or grated cucumber.
Mm-hmm.
Grated cucumber, a sauce that we make out of the tamarind seed. It is very sweet. And of course, the different levels of pepper. So you can have roast pepper, which I stay away from. If you cannot handle heat, don't do roast pepper. Don't do mother-in-law. Don't let the devil's man trick you to get roast or mother-in-law pepper if you can't handle spicy food, because it's very spicy.
Oh yeah.
If you just like a little kick, you have to tell the doubles man slight pepper. You need to say that slight, right? And you wash it down. People tend to pair it with a red Solo. So Solo is a brand of soft drink that we have.
Okay.
But anything is fine. I usually don't have a drink with the doubles. I like to see for the flavor, by itself. So that's one dish you should try. You should also try bacon shark. This is something you normally eat at the beach, but you do have a lot of booths around Carnival time at the Savannah that will sell the authentic bacon shark. Okay. So it's basically like a shark burger. It's actual shark meat. And we add like different like vegetables, pineapple, cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes. You'll have like a whole line of different things to add, different types of sauces that you can add to it after to create your own special bacon shark. So no bacon shark will taste the same. It's always to your preference.
Right.
You get the bun and the shark, and you have to create your own thing. And then we have some other dishes like pilau, which is like a rice dish, rice, pigeon peas, and stewed chicken. Some people also put like other different types of meat in it, beef. I've seen people put pork, but it's not very common. You most see chicken or beef used in pilau, and you always serve it with like a slice of avocado or lettuce, or what we have like coleslaw, which is a salad we make with mayonnaise and grated cabbage. So you have many things that you could choose from. Many things.
Yum.
Yeah, you'll have a very tough time choosing who's here.
You just have to try all the different varieties.
Yeah, that's why I said walk with money. Yeah. Because you're gonna spend it on food. That's what you're gonna spend all your money on when you're here for carnivals.
Well, Janine, thank you so much for this conversation. I think that you have got us all ready to visit Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, come taste the doubles, enjoy our culture, our way of life. We have a very unique, like I was talking to a colleague the other day, and we don't realize in Trinidad and Tobago how unique our culture is. We literally have everybody here fused into one culture.
Yeah.
There's no single national dish because we have so many different cultural dishes. It's hard to choose. People would recommend, just like I did, the doubles, but we have so many things that could be like our national dish. It's too much to really describe. So you have to come and see for yourself.
Yeah. And pick up the book while we're there.
Yes,
Pick up the books while we're there.
definitely. Swing by when you're on your way to Doubles. There's actually a place we call UE Doubles that is near to the campus. Go pick up your doubles there, swing by the campus, grab up a copy of the book, and you're good.
Yes. We're ready. We are ready. I'm ready. I'm ready on
Yes.
behalf of everyone else. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I really enjoyed speaking with you for this whole time. I like to end each episode with the same question, and that is, do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Trinidadian Creole or in Mandarin Chinese to share and to teach us?
Okay. I mean, I think I can give you both.
Okay.
Um, so I mean, we can start with the Chinese. So there's a trend online that I've been seeing recently where like a meme has been going around of Christiana um and it's being used in Chinese spaces to manifest like a better life conditions, good luck. So there was one that I saw and I really like it. And I think it's a good wish that I think everybody would want right now. So there's one that I actually wrote it down. It is 钱会追着你，钱会追着你. So it means 钱 is money.
Mm-hmm.
会 is like will. So something that will happen. 追 means to chase. 追着 is 这 is a particle that helps to, the equivalent of the gerund in English, like the ing. So
Mm-hmm.
chase something that is continuous and ongoing action.
Mm-hmm.
And ni is you. So it means money will chase you. And I remember printing it out and I stuck it up in my office in work. So I was like, yes, money will chase me. So I really like that those kind of sayings. There was another one I really liked as well. It said 我想要我得到. So 想要 means to want something, to have a desire for something. 得到 means to achieve. So what you want is what you will achieve. So I think that's a nice little motto that people can use to take them through 2026 with. And for there's so many in Creole,
Mm-hmm.
but I really like this one because I find it's very funny because culturally. So it's called every bread have its cheese.
Every bread have its cheese.
So
I love it.
it means essentially that, everyone has someone for them. Everyone has something that they will be good at. There's a match out there for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it be a person or a particular passion, hobby, a career. So what I think is very funny because bread and cheese is actually when we are very young and we're now learning to cook and kind of fend for ourselves, or let's say, our parents are sleeping, we're hungry, we often learn how to make bread and cheese. So it's like a very quick and easy dish to make. So it just like when I think of this, I think of those memories in childhood that, I making bread and cheese for for lunch because mommy not back yet or my grandmother's sleeping or something.
Yeah.
I have to make with what I have to make before actual food start to cook.
Right. Right.
So
So we've
every
got
bread has cheese.
every bread have its cheese in Creole.
Yes.
And you gave us two Chinese sayings.
Say,
Can I
我想要
try
我
one
得
of
到
them?
Sure. Which one you want to try?
Let's do the first one.
the first one.
Yeah.
So 钱
钱
会
会
追着
追着
你。
你，
Yeah， 钱会追着你。
钱会追着你。
非常好。Very good. Very good.
All right.
And you tried the harder one, so I like that.
Oh, I did. What made it more? What made it harder?
Because it has more sounds that I would say the combination of sounds would be more difficult to pronounce for somebody who's now like attempting to say some phrase in Chinese. So I think you did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. One of these days, my day is gonna come with Chinese.
With Chinese.
I
Yeah.
promise. It's happening. Well, thank you for sharing those phrases with us. Thank you for teaching them
problem.
to us. This has been a delight speaking with you for this conversation. Before I let you go, in Trinidad, and if there's been a time where you've been talking to someone for some time, but now it's time for you to go your separate ways. In Trinidad, what's the best way to say goodbye?
Laters.
Late. Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that in years.
Yeah, laters.
Wow, that was like a blast from the past for me. Late.
You've heard it before.
I have. You know, I went to church with a lot of people from Trinidad and Tobago, so I've like, you know, we've all been accustomed to one another for a while here in New York City. But yeah, laters. Janine, later.
Laters.
Thank you again, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
New episodes of Speaking Tongues are available every Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to like and share episodes with other language lovers like yourselves.